Hi, I'm Adam Tooze, and I'm with the Regenerative Crisis Response Committee. And I'm here today to introduce you to the theme of mortgage finance and greening the mortgage finance system as a contribution to addressing the climate crisis. A little bit about myself. I teach at Columbia University. I'm a historian in my day job. I've done a couple of books on the financial crisis of 2008 crashed, and most recently on the COVID crisis shutdown, how COVID shook the world's economy. And in the course of thinking about those urgent issues of contemporary economics and politics, of course, the climate crisis is front and center. So it's a great pleasure to be involved with the many wonderful experts in the Regenerative Crisis Response Committee. When you think about the climate crisis and the main drivers of it, you might be thinking of transport or industrial emissions or emissions from power generation or indeed from agriculture. But what we want to focus on in this program is the issue of housing. The combination of construction and the operation of buildings makes them a key node in the climate problem. In fact, we think that residential energy consumption is responsible for about 20% of American greenhouse gas emissions. So this makes it an absolutely key part of the overall puzzle. Some of that comes from air conditioning, it comes from general use of appliances, the heating of homes, the cooling of homes. All of these add up to a major piece of the climate puzzle. And there are two sides to this equation. On the one side, there is the fact that there is this huge body of buildings which are belching out directly or indirectly greenhouse gases. And on the other hand, that property serves as the collateral which secures one of, if not the largest pile of financial assets in the world, which are mortgages secured on American real estate. The opportunity provided by green mortgages is to turn that existing apparatus into an engine for the greening of the American housing stock and a model for green housing finance globally. There is right now out there in the world a huge demand for green mortgage bond products. The market has grown dramatically every year since 2008. Major insurance and pension funds are looking proactively to shift parts of their asset allocation into precisely this kind of asset. BlackRock CEO Larry Fink called climate change the defining issue in companies' long-term prospects. And we see green mortgages as one of the strategic vehicles, one of the instruments by which we can link together the power of private finance, of the government-sponsored enterprises, the backstop, if you like, of the federal government balance sheet, and that giant pool of houses and properties out there that need to be prepared for a new era of net zero. The GSEs have, since the 1930s, been the bedrock of the American mortgage system. And what we see them as is as a huge opportunity to shape a new green mortgage model. The idea essentially is that the conforming mortgage of the future should be a green mortgage, a mortgage which secures for the American family a home that is sustainable and one which is making no negative contribution to the climate problem. The GSEs have already led the way in demonstrating the capacity for green mortgage finance. Fannie Mae in particular has grown its multifamily green mortgage program from 0 to almost 25% of its multifamily portfolio. This is the largest group of green bonds issued by any source in the entire world of finance. The multifamily home approach to green finance is in fact the easy problem to fix. The challenge for a comprehensive greening of the housing finance system in the United States is clearly to move from multifamily to single family homes, which constitute the vast bulk of the housing stock of the United States. There's no way around the fact that this poses a giant organizational problem. It's about setting standards for housing markets across a huge and highly diverse country with different standards of electrical efficiency and local conventions in real estate markets up and down the country. And this is where a key lever comes into play, because to attempt to dictate this from the top down would in general be a huge mistake. But in the case of the GSEs, in the case of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, we do in fact have an agency that can help us in providing them with the incentives they need to move forward in an exploratory, innovative fashion to find solutions for this huge conundrum of how we green the single-family mortgage market. And that lever of change is the key regulator of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, the Federal Housing and Finance Agency, which has precisely the task of setting standards for the entire industry. And insiders have told us is the mechanism through which we will most efficiently achieve that innovative search for solutions to this problem of how we green the single family mortgage. The crucial significance of this is that one step back from the providers of mortgages, the real estate agents that survey and value houses, one step back from Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac that package those mortgages and market them globally. In the FHFA, we have an agency that sets standards, that sets targets, and that can, if you like, from the very top, provide direction and clarity for the entire industry. And this, in terms of setting the horizon of where we need to take mortgage finance, is a crucial advantage. So what could the FHFA do? Well, one thing that the FHFA does is to set volume caps on business for both Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. And what we would be looking for as a matter of urgency is for the FHFA to remove any limit on the amount of green mortgage business that the GSEs do. Another issue that clearly needs to be driven if we're serious about this business of green mortgage finance is that we need to find ways of providing teasers, incentives, preferential rates to folks interested in taking out green mortgages. We need to provide incentives. And we need to incorporate emissions criteria into the scorecard by which the FHFA evaluates the performance of senior management at Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. From our consultations with both those agencies, it's quite clear that they believe that if they are provided with the right targets, if they're provided with the right incentives, however complicated the problem may seem, especially to outsiders to the mortgage business, their expert staff will find ways of pushing this agenda forwards. But the message has to be clear, the direction of travel has to be clear, the urgency has to be there, and the incentives have to be right. This is not to say that this is an easy task. The sense, I think, of the community involved in this business, and we spoke to very many actively engaged members of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac who are seriously concerned about driving this agenda, who see this, as it were, as a task for their generation of folks involved in mortgage and housing finance, but can see ahead of them an entire vista of major challenges that will require creativity, entrepreneurship, and initiative from them. The fundamental issue, perhaps the most important one, is to move from incentivizing green new building to finding a way to retrofit roughly 118 million homes that exist around the United States. We need, if you like, a kind of cash for clunkers program for the housing stock. The other fundamental issue at stake is how we organize a just transition, recognizing these problems in American society and in the housing stock exposes the fact that it is above all the most disadvantaged, the most marginalized, and the most precarious households who are entirely non-coincidentally also most at risk from the sort of climate transition scenarios that we're envisioning. And one of the risks involved in making this move is that in exposing the risks to which they and their homes are subject, they would find themselves redlined out of the housing market. And given the bitter legacy of precisely that kind of discrimination in America's government-sponsored mortgage schemes, it is one clearly of the tasks over the next 30 years to ensure that we in fact achieve the opposite effect, that the push towards green housing finance becomes a vehicle for social and racial justice in American society, a means not of excluding people from access to housing finance, but of ensuring that they have access to finance for homes which are livable and sustainable over the next century.